This is James Starks, and you are watching the Moneyball channel.
Welcome to the Moneyball channel. I'm very excited here. I have Pete Lembo with me. Pete is the head coach for the UB Bulls football team. Welcome to Elmo's and welcome to the show.
Well, it's great to be here. It's great to get to know you guys. And yeah, this is one of my favorite places in Buffalo for sure. One of the first weekends I was here, I brought our offensive and defensive coordinator here. We had a great time and been coming back fairly regularly ever since.
Arguably the best wings. We'll get it into the second. I also have here with me, I have a special guest. I like bringing this guy along time to time, man. One of my real good friends. His name is Will. Will, you've seen on the show, you know his background, very educated, knows his football. Figured if anybody's going to go ahead and just pound this guy with questions, it's got to be Will, right? But so listen, we're excited in Buffalo to have you. A lot of hype kind of surrounding you coming and a revamped program, you know, and I saw a few here and there, you know, a few news articles or just little tidbits on you, right? I think one woman walked around the campus or something with you. And people were excited for two reasons. UB football, right? Let's get it back on track. Let's get going here. Number two, kind of new face. Now, you're the 28th coach, if I'm not mistaken, of UB, correct?
I think so.
You know,
I'm not well. I appreciate that. I'm definitely not a numbers guy.
Okay.
We've got John Fuller from Media Relations here. He can confirm or deny anything you ask tonight. But whatever number it is, I'm happy to be here. And people have been so welcoming over the last year and a half. I grew up on Staten Island, you know, downstate, as we say up here. And, you know, it was part of the city, but it really had a Buffalo-ish feel back in the 80s when I was growing up. So I've been very, very comfortable here thanks to the great people of Western New York. And it reminds me a lot of growing up on Staten Island in the 80s. It really does.
Now, had you been to Buffalo prior to? I mean, whether it be trips or long-term or anything like that, how much did you know about Western New York?
Yeah, so a lot of my career, I've recruited the Northeast, New England, the Mid-Atlantic. So even though I'd never lived in Western New York, I had been up here periodically to recruit. In fact, I remember one trip I was coaching at Dartmouth College in my mid-20s back in the mid-90s. And had to drive out the throughway to home visit an offensive lineman from Orchard Park. Okay. I'm in a little Toyota Corolla. It's a snowstorm, all that stuff. So that was probably my first trip out here.
Experience the real Buffalo.
No question.
Will, let's set you up here. I see you licking your chops over there. I know you got something to ask this gentleman. Let's get you started. What do you have?
Well, I'll tell you what, just kind of piggybacking off of this experience coming into Buffalo, I've heard firsthand from so many athletes. Now I'm a major Buffalo Bills fan, know a ton of players and coaches, but the one thing that they all have a general consensus on is that Buffalo is a football town, and they're really proud of their football here, obviously with the Buffalo Bills, obviously with UB. What's your plan to keep UB on the pace it's on coming off of the season it was on last year, and especially with a new guy at the helm?
Yeah, so last year was very, very rewarding in so many ways because I got hired really late. There were next to no expectations other than our own. And we had a group that had tremendous chemistry, great unity. They were exceptional to be around every day. And in the end, we ended up overachieving, right? And winning a bowl game and finishing the season. We were really in championship contention up until the last week of the season. So all of that was really, really exciting. And part of building the program has been getting our players, getting our staff, and getting myself out there and immersed in the community on a regular basis. And I feel like I've been doing that 2, 3, 4 times a week since I got here a year and a half ago. And I found that the Bills organization is very accessible too. And I think that's part of the allure, right? That they're good people, a good organization. People feel a connection with them. In a lot of ways, I feel like UB is almost flown under the radar here. You know, you take things for granted. We've got a big major research university and one of only 136 schools in the country that play football at the bowl level. And, you know, because it's sort of a low maintenance, blue collar place, you know, it's not a pound your chest kind of place that somewhat taken for granted. So we're trying to change that a little bit and trying to be out there and be visible. And I like to say football can be the front porch of the university. It's never going to overtake the fact that we're the 36th ranked public institution. It shouldn't.
Right.
But let's use it as a marketing tool for the university. And so I'm not the type of person who's going to ask somebody else to do it without trying to lead by example first. So we have really tried hard, and our players have really embraced that. They've actually enjoyed that part of the experience. And even today, I will tell you this: we had an etiquette and communications expert in talking to our guys about not just their current role as UB football players and how they can sort of maximize their own exposure, but just, bettering themselves for the rest of their life, how they make first impressions, how they present themselves, how they carry themselves, how they're always being watched. To me, it's all about this real holistic development of our guys, and getting out in the community is a big part of that.
Now that was one thing that I was actually going to touch on a little later in the program, but it's really important that people understand that while it's amazing to have an accredited coach in who can actually build a football community, be recognized a little bigger than it's been in the past, it's equally as important to educate the youth and teach them what they need to know on the field, but teach them what they need to know in life. It's more important, in fact, to do that, because in the end, they're going to have to deal with those things, whether they make it into the league or not. These are tools that a lot of kids don't get to experience, whether they're Pop Warner or high school. And coaching is everything. Like some of my good friends that played here, like Lee Evans and E. Molds and a whole host of friends, they always go back to their coaches. And they understand
Like it was yesterday.
it was yesterday. And it's like having a second dad to teach them some things, discipline things, some life skills. So it's important to coach. Sure, indeed. We want the wins at UB. We want the wins for the Bills. But more importantly, we definitely want to educate the youth while we're coaching them up.
Yeah, well, think about this. If you're a business major, you might have one professor once or twice in your 4 years, and maybe you like that professor and have a connection with him or her. But we've got these guys right now. We've got them every hour of the day, from the minute they wake up until the minute they go to bed in preseason. And then even once the school year starts, we've got them for 20 hours a week. We've got them 8 hours a week in the off season. We've got them again for 20 hours a week during spring ball. So we're spending a lot of time around these guys. The strength coach is spending a lot of time around these guys. So we can make a huge difference, a huge impact.
Yes.
And even nowadays, if you don't have them for 4 or 5 years and you only have them for 3 or 4 years or 2 or 3 years, whatever the case may be, you can still make a huge impact. And I would argue that if they feel like you're investing in them, they're more likely to stick around, because they feel that they're cared for and that they see how they're changing for the better. Our guys are pretty sharp, and they know that's not going to happen anywhere.
It's a really good segue into where I was going next. And last year, teams combined 3.18 grade point average was the highest in program history. Congratulations.
Thank
and
you.
I mean that sincerely.
Thank you.
To me, reading that is just a massive emphasis on who's leading the team.
Well, I appreciate that.
That means that you obviously hold yourself accountable as well, right?
Yeah.
We want to make sure that these guys are getting the education, and yes, it's intertwined. We want to win football games, of course, right? And back to Will's point, education, this is on the book stuff. But then, hey, what do I do if I do go to the next level? Who's always trying to get into my money, right? Agent, things like that. And that's become a huge thing in the NFL now. The first thing they do at training camps is now they give them courses on, hey, stay away from this guy. Don't let your cousin that you met once, over the past 30 years take your paycheck. So it's incredible, what you're able to do in that regard. When you came in, do you have a recipe for that, or do you have kind of a rule of thumb, with that for academics?
Yeah. Well, two things I would say. It starts with relationships, because you can't have trust unless you have relationships first. And then the second part is high expectations in all areas of life, not selective.
Okay.
How if I'm real and genuine and authentic and comfortable with myself as a coach, how in good conscience can I push you to be a great football player, but then de-emphasize academics or de-emphasize how you carry yourself on campus and in the community?
Yeah.
To me, this is a lifestyle. This isn't a job for me. It's a lifestyle for me. It's a lifestyle for my family and for the guys that we bring into the program, or the guys that we inherited, because they're all ours and they all matter an equal amount. It's about embracing this way of living your life and just doing things the right way.
I don't be culture, right?
It is. And I used to have, when I was a head coach a long time ago, I used to have this big, it seemed like every year there were pages getting added to this big, thick manual all of these rules and regulations. And I promised myself this time around, keep it simple. And we've got a mission statement, which we've already alluded to a lot of the stuff in that mission statement. And we've got core values. And we just talk about living up to that stuff every day. And if we do, we're going to have a great culture. And a lot of this decision making is going to take care of itself.
I love it. I love it. Let's take you back to Lehigh, 2001.
Yeah.
What made you want to become
Which was an introduction to UB. So Georgetown undergrad, most of my buddies went to Wall Street or law school.
Okay.
And the closer I got to graduation, my heart was in football, and not because I wanted to continue to play. I knew playing was over, but I was just so into the organization. And I think that's where the business degree came in as well, because I loved my management classes and my marketing classes and just, the whole idea of running a program like you would run a business just made a lot of sense to me. And to this day, I think if you talk to our players, they would say that there's a tremendous amount of structure, that we really value organization. We talk a lot about efficiency and making sure that everybody's time is being used wisely. We're always looking for creative ways to get better. So I don't mean it in terms of a business that it's like a cutthroat business.
Yeah.
I mean it more organizationally in terms of the day-to-day operations and how we manage things. My career in my 20s was tough because we were small college football at Georgetown. When I came out of college,
you said in your 20s.
Yeah, I came out of college and the NCAA had actually just cut from 5 grad assistants to 2. So the market was flooded with young guys trying to hang on and coach it. So it was tough. So my first job was at SUNY Albany. They were Division III back in the day. I worked for a great guy named Bob Ford. Then to Dartmouth. Then to a tiny little school in Virginia called Hampden-Sydney, which is all male. Not far from
Sydney didn't even make the credentials.
Yeah, I mean it was a little town in South Central Virginia, not far from where from Appomattox, where the Civil War ended.
Okay, yeah.
And then to Lehigh, which you mentioned.
And I heard you're a history nerd, and so am
I
I.
am.
So we're going to get into that.
All right,
so
good.
glad you just
Good.
referenced the Civil War.
All right, good stuff. So I end up at Lehigh. I worked for another great guy there, but it was tough. Jen and I had gotten married. We didn't have much. We're living paycheck to paycheck. And then 3 years later, I became the head coach there. So, patience and persistence and being passionate about what you do and being all in where you are. There were a couple opportunities I had to leave Lehigh, and I stayed, and I think that mattered. And then we ended up staying there another 5 years and had a good run. And then that led to 2 other head coaching opportunities at Elon and Ball State. So it's been a journey. We've moved around a lot like a military family would. But my kids are better off because of it. They've had to be adaptable. And I will tell you this, now they're out of the house, but Jen and I are really enjoying Western New York.
Yeah. Empty nesters.
Quasi empty nesters. We got one home for the summer. And then ironically,
Just when you thought he was out. Huh?
it's a she. And then, now we're going to do some Godfather references, which I like too. And then ironically, my son, who graduated from TCU, got into the personnel recruiting, Moneyball side of college football, got a job at East Carolina, which we were very proud of him. And then 5 or 6 months later, I lost somebody that he had actually recommended to our staff. And my staff was like, we ought to just go after AJ. He knows exactly what we do and how we do it. So we actually have a Lembo, that's another Lembo on our staff right
that's
now.
Awesome.
Which is great. I don't know how long it'll last, but he's doing a great job. And we're happy to have him.
Yeah. Just generally speaking, like early on in your career, in a young coaching career, what do you think, if you could pinpoint one pivotal point that changed the direction of the way you maybe thought of things earlier on? So what would be the transition point that actually evolved you into a new person as far as coaching and redirected some of your goals?
Yeah, the great thing about growing up in the 80s and then going to college, late 80s, early 90s, and then the mentors that I had in the 90s, they were a lot like my parents. They were demanding, but fair and caring, right? And I think, that some of those bosses that I alluded to that I had in the 90s were the same way. They were very demanding. They wanted things done the right way, but you knew they cared, and you knew that those were really strong relationships being built. And I still keep in close touch with all of my bosses from those stops in the 90s, which is really cool. And fast forward to today, I think if these players know that you're doing it for the right reasons. You really care about them. You want to see what's best for them. You want to see them grow and develop into the best versions of themselves. They know when that's real. They're not dumb guys, you know. They know when you're all in. I could go back to South Carolina when I was coaching special teams there, and I was really passionate about what I was doing. But those guys knew I was really, really committed to them becoming the best player and the best person they could be. And if we weren't getting their best, I wasn't afraid to tell them that either. And you know, there's some coaches nowadays, like they coach on eggshells. Like, that doesn't work either.
You got to build the base relationships.
Absolutely. And then you got to be real. And if you want to be good at anything, you need honest feedback. And I think that's what our whole staff does well. I just had a former coach in town for the first 3 days of our preseason. And I was asking him for little nuggets that he was seeing from meetings or practice. And the thing he said over the course of watching 3 days of practice was, your coaches are all good guys. They're on the same page. They care. And the players know that they know their stuff, right? Critical. And if that's the case, you got a chance. You got a fighting chance.
Very well.
Well, you know, it just so happens that a couple of the players did reach out to me today.
Okay.
All right. We can mention some names.
Sure.
You know, we're not going to yet.
All right.
Because Fleetwood Mac came up.
Oh.
And they said, hey.
I can't believe they remembered who Fleetwood Mac is.
I was shocked.
They probably don't know any of the songs. They just know
It was red.
Okay.
And I was shocked.
Red takes great notes.
I said to him, hey, you know, you got to give me a little bit here on Coach, right? And they said, you know what? Honestly, he's a very laid back guy. He's fun to be around. He makes us laugh, but he also works us hard. And then he said, but, you know, big Fleetwood Mac guy, and he's a big history guy, right? So, and again, we'll kind of get into some fun with this in a second. But for them to even know that, and to have a relationship that way with you, and I immediately thought, and now I can see it, you know, the humbleness and just the type of human you are. And I can see it now, what they're seeing as far as, he's a cool dude, you know? More of like, hey, he's our head coach. This guy's going to whip us into shape, but he's a good guy. He's a good dude.
Well,
make sense?
I appreciate that. And they've probably learned a lot of pop culture that they never knew. We actually do have some guys that love their old movies and love their old music. But they've probably started to pick up on the Seinfeld references. And, you know, you had a good Godfather reference earlier. And so to me, that's all part of their education, right? Someday they're going to be at a cocktail party and something's going to come up about, A Few Good Men. Yeah. And they're gonna know that scene.
L.J. Henderson's gonna say, "No soup for you."
That's right. That's exactly right. He's from New Jersey, so not too far away from New York City. So he might actually get that.
He's a great kid. He came here, did an interview. Actually, Will as well when he did one. Great kid. How do you feel going into the season? And obviously the typical answer is, we feel great, whatever. But confidence level good. Injury wise, just everybody feeling. I guess coming off a high of last year, not doing what you guys did. Right? How do you carry that energy in without any type of letdown? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would say my approach has always been more cautious optimism.
Okay.
And that's because I've been doing this a really long time now, and every year is different. It's amazing how this happens, but you mentioned an injury or two. Yeah. All of a sudden a team that maybe wasn't predicted to be as good. All of a sudden, they have great chemistry like we did last year. Yep. People weren't circling our game on the schedule last year. And then all of a sudden, we knock off Northern Illinois and we knock off Toledo. And then it's like, holy cow, these guys might be for real. So that happens to other teams every year, too. So I think staying humble, being modest in your approach, putting the work in, and then figuring out, what buttons to push with this particular team, play into their strengths and minimize the weaknesses, because every team is going to have different strengths and weaknesses. We had an offensive line last year that played 9 straight games every snap together.
Wow.
I mean, that's
incredible.
That's incredible. And you wonder why we kept running the ball better and better down the stretch and all those things. And, so years don't always come together. You just can't take things for granted, and you can't just show up and say, oh, we got a pretty fair amount of guys back, all's well. When you take that all's well approach, then somebody's moving past you. So I work really hard at keeping these guys humble, and they're really good guys, and it's not that hard to do, which is why I still enjoy coming to work every day and enjoy UB so much, because That's not the case everywhere. And in terms of like our fan base, the people that are watching this, that's the reason to root for our guys. You know, it's not because we won 9 games last year.
Right.
It's because we really, really, really have great guys, and they're still about the right stuff. And a lot of these guys could have left because, you know, we don't have the resources that some of the big boys have. And yet these guys decided to stay because they really like walking in that building every day.
Testament to the head coach.
Testament to a lot of people. And like any other organization, if you have a lot of good people and you surround them with more good people, you got a chance to continue to grow. And I will say this, there's good people on our campus too.
Yeah.
And now that I'm here a year and a half, you know, you meet somebody and you're like, hey, that's somebody that is doing things the right way, and let's make sure that they feel a part of our program as well. And then all of a sudden, more good things tend to happen.
How do we get Coach G to give up Bolden? Right, we need to get him out on the football field. Is he just not interested? He's become a friend as well. I've spoken to him and had him on the show, and I was very surprised actually. He really didn't have any interest in playing football. You know, he's on the basketball team. Dad, obviously, decent football player over the years.
Yeah, you know, football's a unique animal, right?
Yeah.
And it's not for everybody. Now, there's a lot of fans out there, and that goes back to what we were talking about earlier with this wonderful Bills Mafia that we have.
Yeah.
Right? There's no
Salute,
reason.
shout out.
Absolutely. And there's no reason that you can't come to a Bulls game on a Saturday or a Wednesday or a Friday or whenever we might be playing, and then still go down to Orchard Park on a Sunday.
That's how I want to make, like, that's what I feel the city should embrace more, right? Make it a weekend of football from the UB Bulls to the Buffalo.
And they could be out of town anyway, right?
I think the new mentality that he's instilling, like, you know, you bring a new person in, they can change the dynamic of an entire program.
Sure.
The mentality of the players as well as the people living in the area.
And then it spreads.
It's infectious.
Yeah.
You know, winning is infectious. Sure, we want to win the games, but we want to show people that we're really invested, one, in the kids that are playing the game. We're invested in the city as a whole.
Yeah.
And make them buy into the program. And once they see that, because I'm not gonna lie, like, I've been born and raised Buffalo, New York, Bills fan my whole life, and more so when I got a bunch of clients that played football for Bills. But I really honestly didn't notice UB football until the last few years. Not even when Cleo Mack was there. Like, honestly, in the last year, because my brother-in-law is a graduate at UB, my nephew sent me a bunch of questions today. He's in med school at UB right now.
Good.
But he's in med school at UB right now. But, you know, we're really playing football. Like, this is a real deal here. And once you start to see them beat teams that have bigger programs, better programs, so to speak.
Yeah.
Not saying ours isn't, but they're just bigger programs, more advanced. You really buy into it as a whole. And then you get a coach who's coming in here and he's speaking to the staff and he's speaking with the kids and he's treating them like his own family, making them buy into that system. That is what will put UB football back on the map. And I do believe that he's headed in that direction with the coach.
Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I agree.
Can I just add one more thing?
Of course.
Relative to the community.
Of course.
The personal connection matters,
Yeah.
right? So if I meet somebody in an Italian restaurant, or a couple of weeks ago, I'm down at Italian Fest and Jen and I are walking around, and, you know, that I think matters in this community, and then with the players. So I'll give you 2 examples. We had about a dozen players work summer internships in Buffalo this year. So they lifted and ran and worked out in the morning, threw on a pair of khakis and a polo shirt, and off they went to this company or that company. Well, now they're interacting with people every day, right? And those are hopefully people that are saying, I want to go watch that guy play.
Exactly.
We did a senior retreat the week before camp started. We could have done that somewhere on campus. We got on a bus. We went down to the Buffalo Niagara Partnership. We did meetings on getting ready for the NFL if you have a chance, leadership, being a successful UB alum. So we sort of that well-rounded life preparedness kind of stuff. And then we went out and about down to the waterfront, over to the Navy ships and things like that in the afternoon, and just interacted with, and it's wonderful. And just interacted with the community. And you know what was really cool? I got stopped by 2 or 3 people. They're like, hey, you're the UB coach, and we're so excited about the season. And so I really think that personal connection matters. And this is the perfect town. We're certainly big enough, right? We've got a million people in Western New York. And here's the other part. You could come to one of our games for the same price as going to the movies.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
And one thing I know about the Bills, you're not going to the Bills
No,
game
you're not.
for the price of going to the
Certainly
movies.
are not.
So you know, if you want to get your football fix and that's out of your price range,
Right.
just come on over and see us.
Right. There you go.
A couple more things. I know, again, appreciate you so much for taking the time. And I know you do have to get running here, but a couple of fun questions we'll get into. Obviously, Sean, you know, he wasn't drafted, signed with the Rams, undrafted, and he's doing very, very well from what I understand.
Yeah.
What was your relationship with him, and have you spoken to him and given him any advice since he's been out there?
Yeah, we're absolutely keeping in touch.
Good.
And he's wonderful. He's a wonderful guy. His family's wonderful. And when I got here, he had already transferred out after that tough 2023 season. And all I kept hearing from all these players and administrators and different people on campus is how wonderful this Sean Dolak guy is. And I said, well, that's great, but he's out at Utah State and we're here. Well, then, you know, he decides to go back into the portal. He had already gotten his degree. And I think he had heard for these 2, 3, 4 months he was away, just how things were going.
Yeah.
And his heart was still here. And he decided to come back. And the way he handled himself, not being presumptuous, not walking back in the door like the world revolves around me, but to the contrary, like, I made a mistake leaving.
Knew he had to earn it.
And I have to earn it back. I've got to build relationships with this new coaching staff. I've got to re-earn the trust of some former teammates. There's a lot of new players in the locker room, all of that. The way he handled himself, I will forever hold dear to my heart. And then his leadership, the way he prepared his student of the game mentality, the sixth sense that he had on the field, just what an efficient mover he was, because he could spot the difference in offensive line splits. He could spot the difference in wide receiver splits.
Right.
He could anticipate what was coming out of formations and motions and shifts, get everybody lined up. You know, the first year of the coach to player communication in college was last year. You couldn't have asked for a better guy than Sean Dolak for Joe Bowen to be on the headset with. So the impact he made, not just in terms of productivity with tackles, but his presence every day. He was truly the leader on that team. And he set such a great example. And now with some of these other guys, you know, the Red Murdochs and the Deion Crawfords and the Al-J Hendersons of the world, they know what it should look like to be a great leader.
100%. And they echo that sentiment too. And, you know, that bowl game was so fun to watch when those guys, the camaraderie, right? And I don't know if there was backflips or what, right? But it seemed like every other play on defense, there was a fumble recovery and interception.
Yeah.
By the end of the
Huge
game,
level of excitement.
it was wild. Where was that? That was in Hawaii, wasn't it?
It was in the Bahamas.
Bahamas.
Hawaii wouldn't have been bad. Maybe someday.
I knew the weather was beautiful.
The weather was great. And a couple things I'll tell you about that. We win the game, but we're not flying home until the afternoon of the next day.
Okay.
So these guys know they're going to go back to this resort, and, you know, there's an 18-year-old drinking age.
Exactly.
You know, there's pools, there's slides, casino, beach. You know, there's plenty of daylight left because we kicked off at noon. And after that game, we had to drag them off the field after about 45 minutes.
Yeah, really.
Because they were just enjoying the satisfaction of what they accomplished with each other.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, we're looking at our watches. We're like, this game's been over for almost an hour. We haven't even got back in the locker room yet to shower.
Get to the resort here, right?
Yeah. And then finally, we drag them all back into the locker room. And I told them, I said, hey, look, you've earned it. Just don't get arrested. And I'll see you at noon tomorrow to load the bus. And they were so well behaved. The whole 4 or 5 days we were there, no issues with curfew. Everybody handled themselves impeccably. And it was a great event for the university, too, because as hard as it is to get there, it wasn't inexpensive by any means. We had a great showing. So it was a wonderful culmination the last season.
Love it. I got a couple Civil War questions before we cut it off. So do you
well,
have anything?
World War II, World War I, Civil War.
Let's get on that.
So in terms of my rudimentary knowledge. But go ahead. Let's shoot. Let's aim high. Let's go Civil War. What do you got?
Well, go ahead. What do you have anything else?
I
For
just
us? Again, I know
one
he's
thing
got to
and
get
then
rolling.
you can finish with that because I know you guys have
go ahead.
buffs.
And I want to take a sip of this.
Yeah,
One of the
there you go.
questions.
You deserve it, Coach. You deserve it.
The one thing, and I know we touched on it a little bit, but it's just important to me because, like I said, I've dealt with a ton of players, NFL level, not so much college, a few college players, like Nathan Roosevelt, who played here. I know him and spoke with him a bunch, but a lot of other NFL players. A lot of things that are in place now that weren't in place then that are critical that people need to know about is the things that are nurturing, like mental health of the players. Because the mental health aspect of the game, you know, you can put a guy in cleats and he can be the best thing out there. Doesn't mean he has to go home to problems. It doesn't mean his head's wrapped too tight.
It's a good one. Yeah.
So it's important to know that the coaching staff and the people that are around the players recognize that and really spend the time to instill those values in the players and really let them know that, listen, man, I appreciate everything you do on the field, but what else is going on? If you see something else going on, you know, drop passes when you never drop passes, you miss blocks when you never miss blocks. Like, what's going on?
Relationships, right?
Relationships.
You're not going to have that level of communication if you don't have an open door. I say to players all the time, like, there's a reason my door is open, right? I want you to walk in. That doesn't mean come see me if your t-shirt doesn't fit, right? We've got an equipment person for that. But, you know, your grandparent just passed away, or, you know, dad lost his job, or, you know, there's a problem with a sibling or something. Like, we can't be sympathetic and get you the help you need if we don't understand what's going on.
Exactly.
So you got to have those relationships in place. And then I think we are so much more aware, you know, in this day and age of some of the potential problems that are out there.
Yes, sir.
We have so much more infrastructure and awareness to deal with those things. So,
People more willing to talk about it.
absolutely, absolutely. And then also knowing, okay, we've got these resources in the athletic department or on campus to help with those things. I think some of those resources are, who are the people that don't make decisions on playing time? The strength coach is a great resource. The nutritionist is a great resource.
I like that.
The trainer is a great resource, right? They have your well-being in mind, but they're not deciding, hey, you're part of this personnel grouping, or you're second string or third string or whatever. So those are good people to go to. And then there's a lot of other resources on the campus that we can steer people to if they're needed. So relationships, awareness, having some sensitivity, you know, being tough, but being fair, being aware of what's going on. Is somebody not being themselves for whatever reason? You don't know that if you don't know them to begin with.
Exactly, sir. Well said.
Very well said. So, yeah, all right. Well, we'll end it with this then.
Okay, I'm ready.
Favorite live band? These are going to be tough ones.
Okay, I'll tell you. No, so I got to see The Who in concert around 2014, and it was in Louisville, Kentucky. And the thing that amazed me was that at that point, Roger Daltrey, Pete Townsend were mid to late 70s. And they were in great shape, and the consistency of their act. I remember looking at a picture of Pete Townsend doing the same kick that he used to do in the 60s and the 70s. Now, he maybe was getting a little further off the ground back then.
Yeah.
Maybe he was only getting a foot off the ground instead of two, but it was the same kick, you know, and the chemistry that they had on the stage together. It was just amazing. So that was a tremendous live show. And then my wife and I also got to see Billy Joel in Madison Square Garden.
Nice.
And that would have been 2019, February 2019. And that was really cool. As a New Yorker, as somebody who's really enjoyed Billy Joel's music, and as a New Yorker, how it tends to resonate.
He's a legend.
That was great to see a live show hit.
Favorite sport other than football to watch? Okay, to watch. So we're going to go watch it on TV, golf, whatever. Not to play, just, you know, to watch on TV.
Yeah, you know, I grew up a big baseball fan. You know, Yankees in the 70s and the 80s. Loved the Big Red Machine in the 70s as well. And then, you know, maybe around that big baseball strike in the 80s, I kind of lost a little interest in it.
Yeah.
I feel like baseball's starting to come around.
Yeah.
I still like watching college basketball, especially when you get to March Madness. I think NBA basketball in the playoffs, NHL hockey in the playoffs. I remember my dad taking me to a Rangers Flyers game when I was like 10 years old. Madness in Madison Square Garden, fights breaking out all over the place.
Playoff hockey.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing like it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've been a lot of places. You've coached a lot of places. Okay. How is Buffalo ranking food-wise? Now we talk about the wings here. That's our staple, right? But food-wise, you've been South Carolina, here.
Yeah.
How are we ranking food-wise?
Really high.
Really high?
Really high.
Yeah.
And the Italian, the wings. Here's a great testament. You can go to any Chinese place and get great takeout Chinese here.
Yeah.
Which you can't, like, you're not we never ordered Chinese food in South Carolina. I promise
gotta be
you.
careful.
Memphis was great for food too. Obviously, the barbecue there and the ribs and all that was wonderful. But Buffalo has just been tremendous. And yeah, you got to be careful with your waistline around.
You really do. Yeah. This was phenomenal. I can't thank you enough again for taking the time. Will, thanks for joining as well. I absolutely wish you guys the best for the season. And I feel really good about it. I feel confident, going in. And, I'm hoping to see sold out seats and people just fired up, to see UP football this year.
Well, we're going to do our best to put a great product out there on the field. We got 7 home games. The ticket prices are so modest. Like if you haven't been to a game before, load the family in the car. The parking's free. All that stuff. It's going to be a great opportunity to spend some time on campus and hopefully see a good quality Division I football game.
Absolutely, gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
All right.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. That's great. Shut her down.